Okay, I've got 11 o'clock, so we will call the Finance and Administration Committee meeting to order. I'm Tobin Hope. I'm calling in from my home in the city of Mount Pleasant in Isabella County.
I am Commissioner Jerry Jalazinski, and I'm participating from my home in Chippewa Township, Isabella County.
And I am Jim Horton. I'm participating from my office in Big Rapids, Michigan, Mecosta County.
Okay, call to the public. Nicole, do we have anyone?
We do not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Then item number 4, consider adopting Isabella County Board of Commissioners Resolution number 21-6-02, authorizing the issuance of bond anticipation note series 2021, declaring official intent to issue said note in an amount not to exceed $6 million and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
Margaret has asked that I take this.
Okay. All right. Very good.
I'm sorry, Margaret, you're muted. Were you wanting to say something first?
I was just going to kick it off a little teeny bit first, and then I'll turn it over to you for the meat of it. So, due to the large project that we have going on, and due to the way our large part of our income comes in property taxes in July and August. Can you hear me, Nicole?
Yes, you're a little faint, but I can. Okay.
I can do something better, I think here. I don't know. Nope, I think I'll just talk louder. We are experiencing a bit of a cash flow possibility of a problem. I would say a possible problem. We have, done our due diligence. At this point, I would recommend that we look for some cash during the transition period between hopefully receiving the USDA bonds for our building project. That process, of course, of submitting that was delayed when we changed properties, and we had to still do our due diligence and have our associates who are working on that on our behalf do their due diligence. So last week, Nicole and I think, Nicole, was it just you and I on that call? I can't remember. Did we have Melissa on the call?
We did not have Melissa on the call. Brnovic on the call with us with bond counsel and
right. Thank you. So it was Nicole and Steve Krnovic and I were on the call with Baker Tilly, who is our financial advisor, and with Dickinson Wright, who is our bond counsel. We had a great discussion. One thing I want to say, kind of before I turn the discussion over to Nicole, a bond anticipation note is nothing more than receiving funds through this apparatus, which is recommended by our financial advisor until the USDA grants funds come in. Nicole, I'm sure will explain that the USDA funds, we will be able to pay off this note with those funds. This is just to keep our cash flow going. And I'm going to let Nicole talk, and then we can get into further questions and discussion as we move on. But I think that I would like to have Nicole talk about this process, and then I can talk to you about a couple other things just to give you a picture. Nicole?
Sure. Thank you, Margaret. So as Margaret mentioned, this would be in conjunction with of course, the Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility Construction Project. As you know, the consideration now and the intent is to issue bonds in the amount of $41.5 million for that project. And as a part of a requirement for that, if you recall, back in early February, the board adopted the notice of intent resolution, and you've successfully satisfied that 45-day required referendum period. And that's really the requirement. Since we already have that in our rear view mirror, if you will, we are able to go forward with the bond anticipation note because we've successfully completed that 45-day required referendum period without any petitions being filed against the project. So part of that notice of intent resolution also did say, we're going to reimburse ourselves for upfront costs on this project. And I know that was talked about at the time of the notice of intent resolution. And so this is the project Margaret's talking about, The process to do that is a bond anticipation note. And basically, with that, we can seek reimbursement for some of the costs that we have already incurred. A bond anticipation note allows us to borrow up to 50% of the principal amount of what the project bonds will be. So we can actually borrow over $20 million, but certainly the need is not there for that at this time. County administration at this time is requesting a $6 million borrow on this bond anticipation note. This would cover the over $2 million that we've already incurred in the pre-construction costs. This will leave some money for purchase of property, and it'll also cover more costs that we'll have before the bonds are actually issued. Margaret said once USDA bonds are issued, they'll be used to pay off this bond anticipation note, and they will. The requirement of this note is it's paid off within 60 days, the earlier of 60 days or 3 years, 60 days after we receive bond proceeds or 3 years. So that means we have this note, we get our $6 million to pay for costs incurred, cover upcoming costs. We get the USDA funds, and within 60 days of that $41.5 million bonds, we have to pay off this bond anticipation note. Say we go along and that bond is held up, or for whatever reason it is not, the bond process is not, we don't go through with it for any reason, then this bond anticipation note would need to be paid off within 3 years. That's our outstanding liability. If you would, the county would still be responsible, of course, for the full payment of this if the project bonds were never issued. Of course, the project bonds are intended to be issued. That's the whole point of all of it, right? That's every intention of ours. So in order, even though this is just considered a note, we still need to hire professionals like we do when it's a bond issue. So for this note issue, we would need to hire financial advisors or a municipal advisor. We have experience with Baker Tilly in that regard. And then for bond or note counsel, we recently have worked with Dickinson Wright in that capacity. So those costs are spelled out in the staff report. The financial advisor, their cost would be a flat fee of either from $6,000 to $11,500, depending on the placement method utilized for the note sale. There are a couple different tracks we can go with to finalize the note process. Depending on which track we go with, their costs are different. And then bond counsel is an amount not to exceed a flat fee of $10,000 plus the expenses not to exceed $200. So basically, to this end, as Margaret mentioned in the beginning, general fund has been absorbing the pre-construction costs of this project. It is causing a financial strain to continue to do so without reimbursement. So really, that is why we're asking you to consider adopting the authorizing resolution in your packet for the issuance of the bond anticipation note in an amount not to exceed $6 million.
So if I may say a couple things, the anticipation note to have this hopefully approved today and taken to the board, the financial advisor and the bond attorney will both be able to attend via Zoom. The meeting on Tuesday, they were not able to attend the meeting today. I know that there had been a question about where are we with our budget. I just want to assure the commissioners that I have been in contact with both of our contracts with both Clark Construction and with Integrated. We are not over budget. We are still in the pre-construction stage. You have to remember that we changed locations. So as far as Clark, we are still in the pre-construction stage. We are not over budget. As far as Integrated, we are not over the budget. We have an unexpended line item, primarily unexpended in travel, because of course nobody's been traveling the last 15 months. So as far as if one were to look at the integrated contract, we are not over budget there. We may be over a line item here or there, but we are not over budget. So I want to make that clear for the record. I know there has been some, I don't know what word I would use, question, I guess, about that. So I just wanted to clarify that for the board's knowledge. We are also looking at another funding option. It might still be a bond situation like this, or it might be a different type of financing. So we have some options still and moving forward. So with that, we are welcome to, Mr. Chairman, that's our comments moving forward. And
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Jasinski?
Well, Margaret was kind of coming in and out for a while there, but you said you were looking.
I'm sorry.
You were coming in and out for a while, and you were explaining that there was some other options and bonds. Are you talking about other options for a short-term bond, or other options and going with the federal back bond?
So I'll tell you, I'm sorry I'm cutting in and out. Is it better now?
Seems to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm cutting it out. I apologize. That's never a good thing. I will tell you that I had a conversation yesterday with the president and CEO of Isabella Bank and Trust. It was a wonderful conversation. They are very interested in working with us, whether it's through this bond, they would purchase the bond, or if there's another option. I'm waiting to hear back from him today, but it was a very positive conversation. And his comment to me was, Margaret, this is exactly why we exist, is to help with these gap situations. And we would be more than happy to work with Isabella County on this. So he's looking into some of his options, going to talk to some of his folks who do this on a regular basis. And I'm expecting to hear back from him today. So that other option might be on the table come Tuesday, but because of timing issues, we wanted to get this resolution in front of the board. Even if the local bank decided to buy these bonds, we would still need to have this resolution. So if they chose, yes, we're going to help, we're going to do this, but we want to do it with this bond. By going locally, we certainly would have access much sooner. And I think it would be to our advantage to work with a local financial institution who, you know, the corporate office is down the street from us. I think it's a good thing for us to do.
Okay. I am in support of this. You know, I know that the monies we've been paying out for the project has caused a cash flow problem, contributed to that. And it'd be nice to be able to move away from that. I do have kind of maybe a question or a statement. I know the original $41.5 million for the total project is probably several years old. I think that was actually the dollar figure when we had the initial study done by this firm years ago before we moved towards a construction kind of a phase. That was that dollar amount back then. And I know cost of materials have been going up. I'm wondering if our consultants will be providing us with an updated construction budget before we actually have to move on the big bond issue.
So Commissioner, that's a good question. I had discussions with the financial person for Clark on Tuesday as he was driving across the UP from a business trip up there. I was pretty jealous. He was driving along Lake Michigan. It sounded lovely, but he is going to work on a new budget for us. I don't know that we'll have it. I don't think we'll have it by Tuesday, but he was going to do that. He, you know, needed to have what we had agreed to in the purchase agreement for the purchase price of the property, and then he would start plugging numbers in. I'll tell you this, the Chairman Horton and I, you know, in any Zoom meetings we had with the architectural and engineering firm and the construction firm at this point have told them to stay in that budget. So I don't know that budget, that number will end up being totally firm by the time we go to USDA, but at this point, we're working hard to try to stay in that number.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, Commissioner. That was on my mind as well. As we all know, you know, the cost of building materials seems to be taking off as of late. Do you have questions or comments?
Myself, yeah, I just listen and, you know, I hear terms, some Margaret will tell you, and Tobin, Jerry will tell you, the guys all the same. You guys all know this. I listen for words now more carefully than I ever did. So I hear words like problem and strain. So I just, Google just now sitting here because I got multiple screens going in this environment. When you just Google problem, words like complication, difficult, dilemma. I wouldn't use the term headache, but Margaret might disagree with me on that one. Obstacle, plight, predicament. Those are all synonyms of what we're kind of seeing now. We try to do everything, not we, well, the team, everyone did, try to work in-house to fund this initially. I mean, obviously prolonging or having to move locations has stretched this out. We talk about, and Jerry makes a very good point, and so does Tobin, in regards to unanticipated construction costs. When we originally started looking at the jail project, no one anticipated COVID. No one anticipated that plywood would be the price it is today. I mean, I wish I had a warehouse full of plywood right now. I could probably quit doing law and just sit there and go down to Florida and rent to get a boat and put it on a marina somewhere. But, but I think in hearing some discussions that we've had, Margaret briefly touched on it, it might be a situation where maybe our delay has helped us a little bit. I don't know. In the COVID era, I'm not saying any delay help is a good thing, but hopefully they can get this as our economy starts to open back up. Some of these prices hopefully will drop. I mean, that's a guess. I mean, that's our best. We don't want it to continue to go up. I don't know why plywood would continue to go up or things like that. But so yeah, I agree. I mean, is this going to be enough? But we have to get going. We have to address these, as I said before, the acute problems. I say, or the acute complication, or the acute obstacle, or the acute predicament that we're in on our financial strain. So, yeah, I mean, we put out a lot of money. I think when Nicole presented the budget back in September, I mean, we all agreed that the amount of dollars that were being spent, that we were allocating for the jail hurt us, and it's only gotten worse. So we can't do this in-house anymore. We've got to do something else to get us the ship righted. And so I agree. I mean, this is stuff that we need to do. And while we didn't think that we would be in this predicament, it's not uncommon. I mean, things get delayed. I think everyone agrees that the jail is necessary. We've approved the dollar amount. I don't think those are any issues whatsoever. I mean, maybe unless it goes up, but definitely think the jail is necessary. It's not something that we can sit there and say, well, let's prolong this 5 years and see what the economy goes around. Every day or every month, we are in a situation where that quickly and probably is a money pit right now to the county. I think we talked about a boiler not too long ago, that the cost of what are we going to do with that darn boiler? I mean, it's so anyhow, that's my statement. I fully support what the commissioners here have said, and would be in support of this resolution. So,
Thank you.
yeah, that's all I have. Thank you, Tobin.
Couple questions. The staff report says an amount not to exceed $6 million. So is it like a line of credit where we use what we need from it?
Well, I think that, if it ends up being a purchase of bonds, it'll be the $6 million. One thing that I don't think I did say, and this will interest this group, because it interested me when I asked the question. I asked our financial advisors, what do you think the interest rate on that would be? And they said between 1 and 2.5%. It was shocking to me. I mean, I just thought it would be higher than that. We know interest rates are low. So they actually, and then, later in my notes, because I was reviewing this morning before the meeting, it was like, well, but we expect it to be less than 2%. I will say that yesterday, in the conversation I had locally, was that we did not discuss interest rates. But if that option with the local institute was to work, that would provide those funds much quicker than going out onto an open market. And I do know that institution already told me they were very interested, and were very assuring that they were very happy to get the call. I will be honest with you. And you know, the cynics might say, well, of course they would, Margaret, they're going to get whatever, but it really was a wonderful conversation about local service. I was quite happy. So I think that, Tobin, you know, because it said, I mean, it does say up to $6 million, but I would think at this point, that's the lingo provided to us by our bond attorney, but it will be $6 million.
Okay, very good. The other question I have, and maybe maybe you can explain this without getting too deep in the weeds. Maybe you can't. That's fine if you can't. But the advisor costs fluctuate according to placement method, and then Nicole, you talked about what track we use.
I can do that. I think I can explain that for you. So there's two different options to go. One option is to go to a local financial institution and say, we're interested in this bond anticipation note. Are you interested in buying the bond? So we go to them and ask them that, which is kind of a question that happened yesterday. But then in that discussion with the local institute, I also asked, are there other options? That's what they were going to look into and get back to me. So if we do the bond anticipation note, which path we go to is, do we go to the local lender and say, are you interested in buying these and at what rate would you charge for that? Or we go out with an RFP process managed by the financial institution, and then you hear back from financial institutions all over. That process is much longer, and I don't think that is interest. And actually, neither did Baker Tilly. They recommended, Margaret, if you think you have a relationship with somebody at a local institution, call them. I did after discussion it with our chairperson. He said, Margaret, make the call. So I did yesterday. So that is more advantageous to work locally, whether it's a bond anticipation note or a different method of funding. But I think the different amounts of what the charge would be based on which of those options we use.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, commissioners?
Margaret, just Chairman Holt, real quick. The difference between the bond, the full the USDA bond, the 41.5 or so, and the short term, you mentioned up to like 1 to 2.5%. What is the anticipated rate on the USDA loan? Does anybody, what's the going concern difference?
I haven't heard anything recent on that. I'm looking at, I see Steve Kranovich has joined us. He was traveling back from another appointment. I haven't heard anything. And Steve, I know you and Nicole were on that call with me last week. I don't remember them, Baker Tilly making any comment about the long range bond interest rate. Did you?
No, I don't recall them saying anything either. I don't remember when we put together, and maybe that's what Nicole is looking up. I can do too, but I know initially they gave us some amortization schedules. I don't remember what their rates were that were in there, but again, that was back kind of at the inception. But no, recently they did not mention anything on that call.
I would be happy, Commissioner, to ask to have that information. But again, that's going to fluctuate. If we don't do the USDA for another 8 months, that might change. But I will be happy to, we'll talk to Baker Tilly and ask him.
In memory, it seems to me that the percentage wasn't, if it was lower than this short-term issue, it wasn't much. In fact, it might even be higher, I'm thinking, than that. So, so from an interest standpoint, the monies that were the percentage of interest that we're paying on those upfront quicker dilemma dollars. I don't think the percentage in interest is going to be a difference in my mind. So that was my just a quick thought, a random thought that I wrote down. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Hope.
I will make a motion then that we consider adopting the Isabella County Board of Commissioners Resolution number 21-06-02, authorizing the issuance of bond anticipation note series 2021, declaring official intent to issue said note in an amount not to exceed $6 million and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
I will support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. And we'll move on to item number 5 on the agenda is consider approving the $4,706,429 in American Rescue Plan Act funds to be reimbursed to Isabella County for $16,969 of COVID-19 expenditures, $1,132,172 in public safety payroll, and $3,557,288 in lost revenue. Margaret, are you
So,
taking?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'm going to take it and then I'm going to turn part of it over to Steve. So let's talk about the $16,969. You know, for the last 15 months, we've been keeping track of our COVID expenses, of which you have seen attached to the invoice list, right? And some of those expenditures are not going to be reimbursed to us just because that's the way it rolls. Not that anything was not kosher, it's just that's the way it rolls. So when we look at the American Rescue Plan for these types of expenses, allows us to go back to March 3rd of this year to look at what our expenses have been. So since March 3rd, for COVID expenditures that we have not been able to charge elsewhere, or receive reimbursement elsewhere, that is where that figure of $16,969 comes from. So that's what that money is. Again, you know, interim rule and those types of things are expanding. Some information came out yesterday. There wasn't any change in that. I think that might be the best we can do, and that's okay. So that is that one. The expenditures and safety, public safety payroll. These are the expenditures and payroll for our public safety, for our sheriff's department since March 3rd, because again, we can't go back any further than that. So that is $1,132,172 since March 3rd in payroll expenses. Now, there is some, I don't want to say, I hate to use the word confusion. There's different, the interpretation, it's very clear according to the interim rule and the act itself, that we cannot use any of these monies, and rightfully so, to pay additional monies on a pension situation. We can't make a contribution of $1 million to a pension to try to fund a plan, but we can include retirement benefits and any wages or fringes that we pay. So this $1,132,172 is directly from our our BS&A records of what we have paid out in public safety payroll for that time period. I know that in your packet, and I know that you had a very large packet this time, but I wanted to make sure that everybody had what I think is one of the best source documents since this whole thing is the NACO, which we sent out to you. I think it's very useful. And I know that many of you, I'm sure, have been on the NACO calls, other calls, but you know, what we're receiving from NACO to me is certainly very user-friendly information, but I think the most comprehensive information because they worked with the White House on the legislation, and they are working with the Department of Treasury for all of us counties across the country who are asking questions. They're kind of a clearinghouse. So I have really appreciated the effort that NACO has put into their information. And, you know, I think the part that's interesting for this discussion, as is in the staff report, refers to page 13 of that document. That's payroll expenses for public health and public safety employees. So we, as a county, do not have payroll expenses for public health because we don't have a public health department, right? We're part of a district. So when you look at the public safety employees, it talks very clearly about, you know, for administrative conveniences, safety employees to be entirely devoted to mitigating or responding to the COVID, and therefore covered if the employee or his or her operating unit or division is primarily dedicated. So our operating unit and division is the sheriff's office, which includes the deputies, it includes the road patrol, which is the deputies, the corrections, et cetera, and the entire unit. So I can tell you, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the sheriff, and I would never do that. He's very capable of speaking for himself, but he and I have had multiple discussions about this. As reasonably as last evening. But for him, he made a great comment to me about, as far as the corrections, from the time a cruiser pulls up in their Sally Port to bring in an inmate, they are all COVID related. Because by the time they test, by the time they clean, by the time they sanitize, by the time the kitchen stuff does that, by the time the police clerks who walk in the back and take information back, by the time a detective goes back and interviews somebody or whatever, it is a wide variety for that entire operation. I will say that part of this requirement is that, we do not have to, and I'm going to tell you, and I've told you, I think I told you this in an email. I managed federal grants for a living for years, and I know that, things have to be allowable, reasonable, necessary, and that you have to be able to show what you did and why you did it. Our BSNA software, again, is such a blessing that we moved to that, because all the information that we're going to have to support any of these expenditures is going to be. The one thing that we will be doing is we will be working with the sheriff on an attestation and looking at, do we want to, the interpretation of this option is that it includes the entire unit or division or department. That is the sheriff's office and all of their divisions. So we are going to need to work with the sheriff on an attestation that he is comfortable with. So when I'm looking at the $1,132,172 as of last night, that's the figure that we know is in our payroll. And we, I have that, which is that we know is in our payroll records, that that's what we've paid out. But he and I want to have a little more discussion to be sure that, are we going to do 100% of that? Are we going to do 80% of that? What are we going to do? We know that 100% is allowable and is allocable and it's reasonable based on the information, and Lord knows it's necessary. So I have no doubt that going with 100% is totally acceptable. He and I just want to have one more conversation with him and assist him with any attestation. So that is where we are for that. Now we have lumped these together in this motion, and we can, talk about that later if we want to, but that's where we are as far as the public safety. And with that, I would like to turn it over to the more in-depth dive that Mr. Karinovich is going to do on the loss revenue. Steve?
Great, thanks, Margaret. Yeah, so as I know Margaret has talked about and so forth, part of the ARP calculation can be this lost revenue, and that's part of the act that allows for recapturing, for lack of better terms, some lost revenues, and it's a time set in the base year, which in your case is September 30, 2019. So that's kind of our base year, and then it goes back 3 years. So it goes back to 2016, 17, 18 to kind of get a trend, and then it rolls ahead to 2020. And so as I think Margaret mentioned maybe a time or two ago at the finance committee or two ago, we were in the process of developing a spreadsheet kind of to work through that revenue loss. Thankfully, one of the benefits of being members, the county is a member, our firm and myself is also a member of the Government Finance Officers Association, so the GFOA. So the GFOA developed the calculator, which was saved a substantial amount of time, effort, beta testing, so to speak, and all of that, since they were able to provide, a spreadsheet for us to utilize and a calculator for us to utilize. Even though I know Commissioner Horton thinks sometimes my spreadsheets get a little more elaborate. I'm not that great at spreadsheets, and so I was wonderfully I was happy that GFOA developed, the calculator and did the beta testing and so forth. Saved us a lot of time. So as part of that was gathering all the information and putting it together and so like I said, they use that base year of September 30, 2019. So it's your last full year prior to the pandemic. So in your case, September 30, 2019. And then we look at a trend from 16, 17, 18, and then 19. And then we compare that to, to the 2020 year. And one of the unique things about the act in the IFR, the interim final rule, was they utilize something that isn't very helpful to us, is they utilize that 2020 time period is December 31st, 2020. So for you as the county, your fiscal year end being September 30, it requires us to compare September 30, 2019 to December 31st, 2020, which, for lack of better terms, is, I don't say what I want to say, it is totally backwards and totally, it basically requires us to compare 15 months back to your last 12 months and do this kind of annualization. They call it a new term that I had not heard, counterfactual. So counterfactual revenue. So whatever, so to do this counterfactual calculation and again, talking about having to, look up terminology and like, well, what does that mean? And so it is, it says relating to and expressing what has not happened. So that's kind of the definition of counterfactual. Because I had to Google it and to look that up. So anyway, so looking at that projection, and to gather all of that information for the county as a whole. And that's the thing, that's the big stress, is they stress entity-wide. And so it's looking at everything within the county. And our system's not set up to gather information as of December 31st. I mean, we can gather information, but it's on our fiscal year, because that's how our general ledger, we talk about BSNA and being a wonderful system. And it allows us to gather information on our fiscal year. So to gather that as of December 31st, we're still actually working on that. So what I did, and you'll see, and happy to share the spreadsheet. I don't know, did that go out to the commissioners, those pages? I can share it with you. I've got the.
I don't have it. I didn't send it out. Nicole, I didn't send it out.
If I can share my screen, I'll show you. Sure. Show other windows here. Let me see if I can. I don't know why this is doing this. I'm going to go to here. No, I'm going to go here. Well, as I'm finding that, I'll talk as I'm finding. Here we go. Okay. So can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I won't go through this in a lot of detail because it's multiple pages, it's multiple, in-depth detail. But as you can see here, as we talked, the base year is September 30, 2019. And then the calculation year is December 31st. Well, what I did, because the last solid information that we have is September 30 of 2020. So even though I can't override that number, right, or that cell right there. A lot of the spreadsheet was protected when GFOA sent it out. But I was able to go in and change the spreadsheet to allow me to do it on a comparing apples to apples rather than apples to tangerines on a comparing September to December. And so plugging all this information into the system, your general ledger is about 20, to be honest, it's 2,200. When I printed it to Excel, it's 2,250 lines long. And so what that means is taking 3 spreadsheets and trying to combine 2,250 lines to get us something for December 31st. So to get this information to you folks today, we use September 30 of 2020 because we had audited information, which is solid information as of September 30, 2020. And there's actually part of the back pedal or back step a little bit, the IFR, and that's why it's called an interim final rule. We have the ability to send in comments related to the IFR to the feds. And that's one of the things that GFOA stressed, that people should send in comments to say, not everybody has a December year end. Not everybody has a December 31st year end. And so that the standard setters would look at that and say, well, it makes more sense for you to compare fiscal year to fiscal year. And so that's something that we're looking at sending back to the federal government to make that suggestion. Long story short, but so the bottom line here is, as you look at this, look at this spreadsheet. Here is that number that's quoted in the agenda. After you look at this and you what it allows for is looking at your base year here as 62 million total. What it does is it compares your actual increase in inflation or increase in growth, compare it to this amount that's set in the IFR of 4.1%. So for instance, say your revenues over the past, since 2016, have grown 10% a year. Then your growth rate in here would be, hey, we grow at 10% a year. We would have expected 2020 to grow at 10%, just like every other year. So that would have been what was used in the revenue reduction or the revenue loss calculation. If your calculation is less than 4.1%, the interim final rule allows you to use a 4.1% growth rate. And so this, so that is what is driven. If your growth had been 2%, let's say 2 or 3%, the calculation allows you to use 4.1% as your growth rate. And then so basically it says, base year times the growth rate is this, again, counterfactual revenue. So this is what you would have estimated your revenues to be in 2020 without the pandemic. And that's 64. And then actual revenues, again, based on the audited information, is at 61 million. So the difference between those two is this 3.5 that is in the staff report and then reported on the agenda. So that's probably way more information than you wanted to ever know about the calculation, but that's the kind of the gist of the calculation. And again, thank you to the GFOA for doing this calculator for us and every other member within GFOA to utilize. But that's kind of how the sausage was made.
Steve, is a good time to ask a question?
Yeah, at your call.
I see the base revenue is 62,071,033 dollars. I know our general fund revenue is what, 19 million? And so I think we got probably Parks and Recreation, Commission on Aging. What other components are in there that comes up to that 62 million?
The key in the Federal Register, the key is entity wide. So it's everything that is part of the county. So it's what we call the primary government, just like you said, Commissioner, is general fund, Parks and Rec, Commission on Aging, all funds and go into that calculation. In addition, that go in there is all of your component units because it's entity wide. So it's a requirement. So it's
like road commission.
I'm sorry.
Like road commission.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The road commission, medical care facility, transit and drains and all of those other entities, because they're part of your entity as a whole, they're required as part of the, as part of the calculation to be included in that entity-wide.
Just
Thank you.
clarification, the road commission would be included in that?
Yes, they're considered a component unit of the county.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so all of those component units get included in there too. And so that's kind of the part of this analysis, is that revenue loss calculation is required to include all of those, as like I said, as the entity-wide amounts to include in the analysis. And you're not supposed to differentiate or segregate the different types of entities, like the general fund and the road. It's the entity as a whole. So it's the county as a whole. So yeah, so all those get taken into consideration is that's the U.S. Treasury and so forth. They provide that stipulation or whatever to require all of those to be included in this revenue replacement or this revenue loss calculation.
Would the district health department be one of those component units too?
They are not part of that, because I think I'd have to look, but I feel like they are part of their, for lack of better terms, home county, or their primary government, I think, is Macomb County. Because you're in Central.
Oh.
That's mid. Central, I'd have to look to see, Commissioner. I'm not sure. It's not you, but it's one of the other counties. It's kind of their home county, or they're included within their entities as a component
Fiduciary.
unit. Because it's a district health department. So they might stand on their own. I'd have to look that up to see. It's not Isabella County, for sure.
Yeah, in all likelihood, the way that meeting is done is usually it's in Clare County. So off the top of my head, I would think it's Clare, but that's beside, I don't know the answer to that either.
I don't know how many counties are included in your district. They very well may, and they got their own pot of money. I mean, if you are a single county health department, there are some counties that have single county health departments. That obviously would be included in yours. But if you're part of Mid-Michigan or Central Michigan or District 10 or whatever, a lot of those being authorities stand on their own, and they've gotten their own components of, kind of as Margaret mentioned, that public health money. They got their own pot of, they were included in their own pot of money, at that point in time. And like I said, some of those, one of the big exclusions as you go through this analysis is federal revenue. So you exclude, over all of those years that we've talked about, you exclude your federal revenues. So as your federal revenues have increased, and especially last year, when federal revenues, as I remember, I know Treasury doesn't like this term, but there was that replacement of, they took away state revenue sharing dollars, which were state dollars, and they replaced it with CARES dollars, and so you got additional CRF funding. So that in essence, we eliminated some state dollars, which is included in the calculation. And we excluded federal dollars, which is excluded from the calculation. So, I mean, in theory, I hate to use the term that helped, but that basically did increase the lost revenue, because it was non-federal revenue. And there's some other things that they're excluding from this calculation, even though we talked about, like the transit is included in here. Fair revenues are excluded, and other things such as, let me find my little cheat sheet here and give you some examples of, like I said, federal revenue is excluded. If you had like a city, a water system revenues or electric system revenues, those are excluded. You exclude bond proceeds and some other, if you had some unique reimbursements or miscellaneous prior period adjustments and that type of thing. There are some exclusions from revenue, and those are some of the bigger ones. Probably the biggest one is the federal revenue, which makes sense, because if they've increased the amount of federal revenue they've given you because of the pandemic or whatever, that shouldn't negatively impact you on this calculation. So they logically saw that, and they're excluding that revenue from the analysis and that type of thing.
So,
Mr. Chair, could I add a couple things?
Absolutely.
So remember, again, according to the document from NACO that you've received on page 14, that once the lost revenue calculation is made and accepted by the county, then that money may be used for most general, there we are, most general government purposes except for activities such as rainy day or reserve funds. So if the board says, okay, well, we agree with that, let's do that. That money then goes into the general fund and it can be used for all sorts of things. So not only could it be used for our whatever internally, but there isn't anything that any of those funds have to go back to any of those component units. And a couple things, remember, as Steve said, the road is going to get their own money through the state. I would think the transit authority, although I don't want to,
They've already
I would believe that they've already got theirs, have they not? Or they're going
Yes,
to
they've
get
already
theirs.
gotten a
Yeah,
substantial.
already gotten their own money. The health department is going to get their own money. Although I will say here, I did receive the email that Commissioner Moreno sent out, and the request that they're asking to go up for their appropriation of 13.5 is something I will just work into the FY22 budget, because I think that's more than reasonable. So I know we all saw that. That's an aside. But also, you know, the health department is going to get their own money. Medical care facility at some point is going to get some money. So it's not intended, it's a strange calculation. Well, I don't know, strange might be the word. It's a unique calculation that we have to include all of those in our calculations, but there isn't anything to go back in that inclusion. Now, that doesn't mean that this money, if it becomes, is approved by the board, not only can we use it for our own general purposes that we could use general fund monies for mostly, but we can also say, well, but we're also going to use that money for some of the other things that are allowable under the Affordable Care Act. And I'll just make something up because we've never talked about this. I don't want to use a real life example, but let's say that we decided, the Board of Commissioners decided, you know, we would like to provide for X, Y, and Z. And we want to do that through agency F, and we want to give them $25,000. Well, it would be
Margaret, I don't want to interrupt you. I think you said Affordable Care Act. Is that
I'm
the
sorry.
American Rescue Plan?
I say that sometimes.
You got,
I'm
you
sorry.
got your ARPs and your ACAs and your
I
NCAs.
did. American Rescue Plan. I
Yeah,
apologize.
I think you did say
So
Affordable
if-
Care Act. I just wanted to clear. Yeah,
I
go
know.
ahead.
I'm so sorry. I do say that occasionally. I don't know why I do that. So if the board were to approve this today, we would transfer this money into the general fund and into our probably common cash at this point. And then, you know, the Board of Commissioners could decide, okay, well, let's look at, we're going to use, I'm making this up. We're going to use, you know, let's put a third of that into our general operation. And then let's kind of wait on the other part and we'll talk about that. And let's say that you did decide you wanted to give $25,000 to that organization to do something specific. You could do that from these funds with less restrictions than doing it under the other sections of the American Rescue Plan. So by saying that we know that this is what the calculation is, we're very comfortable with the calculation. Steve has been to as many, if not, more trainings than the rest of us, and he is a CPA, and his firm is doing this for other communities and other clients that they have. And I know that we were one of the first that they've done, and we appreciate being their beta test. It's going to be good for us. But we would like to move forward with this, and with the understanding, of course, that these monies can be used for general fund purposes, but they can also be used for other purposes. And we are not going to spend all of these funds at one time. And these are going to be decided by the Board of Commissioners. So I just want to clarify those things so that there's no confusion about kind of what the purpose of today's request is.
Appreciate that. Steve, also, I appreciate you walking us through that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's extremely, you know, confusing. And I mean, spent a lot of hours kind of going through that, and actually, you know, again, me being the nerd, I want to spend more time. I mean, I feel, you know, like the numbers, that 3.3 million is, you know, based on everything that went into the calculator. That's what the calculator spit out. Well, you know, again, kind of even the auditor in me and so forth wants to not only double check those numbers, but triple check those numbers. And in fact, I just talked to one of my partners yesterday and I said, I'd like you to take a look at just to make sure, you know, again, I mean, it's only as good as the calculator. Well, we hope the GFOA did you know, and from what I can see, they did a great job on the calculator, but, you know, I felt, you know, reasonably comfortable as I went through and keyed the numbers in. And as I look at the entity wide again, I feel comfortable with that, you know, with that number that's on there, that 60 odd million. And because again, it's entity wide and that lost revenue that's about when I look at your annual comprehensive financial report, you know, that giant 100 and some odd pages. When you look at everything entity wide, it's about 60 million is kind of, you know, what was in my head. And so I felt like, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable. But again, I maybe dwell on things a little too much. And so I want to double and quadruple check them again, just to make sure. I'd rather be at, you know, 99% comfort level than at the 95 I'd maybe sit at right now. And for my sake and for your sake, you know, to make sure that we have the best numbers that we can, if and when, you know, there's a questioning by the federal government. I know that was an interesting thing that I did hear from all of these conferences and the multitude of things. I think they use the term, or I think they use the number 33,000 entities, you know, will be, that doesn't even include what they're calling the non-entitlement units, I think, you know, so this is 33,000 entities are getting this money nationwide. And so, you know, so the expectation, and the woman from the GFOA did a wonderful job. She did, you know, was great in her presentation. And, you know, she said, whatever you do, you want to have that information and have it documented, that maybe that's 8 years, maybe that's 9, 10 years from now, when they come, you know, potentially come and say, how did you come up with, you know, that number, or how did, you know, your calculations and so forth. So we need to be, as Margaret has used the term, you know, we need to be, you know, kind of slow roll, you know, and move through it slowly, you know, methodically, and make sure that we have a comfort level by everybody. So, you know, so we can have that, you know, 8 or 9 years or 10 years or whatever it is from now, if they come knocking, we can say, here it is, you know, and have all that documentation to support our numbers.
You know, one thing I would like to add, if I may, I'm sorry, real quickly.
Go ahead, Margaret. No, go ahead.
That one of the things that the American Rescue Plan can be spent on, and I'm looking for this, which one of my 48 different sources I have here. I know I have it. I think it's someplace else right now, but another list of, I know, I think it is that the State Department of Treasury sent out a draft numbered letter, and I believe it says it in that, or maybe it's another document in the last day I've read it. But it has been determined that yes, we can pay, maybe that's not the word. We can charge back to this funding any costs that we pay to a consultant to administer and or financially or managerially or any other way these monies. So, you know, as we're moving forward with Steve here, Mr. Brennebeck, as his billing comes in, I haven't asked him this yet, but I'm going to need to have it start to be broken out of what's been going for spent on the American Rescue Plan from March 3rd forward into the next 5 years. And remember, this money does not have to be spent until 12/31 of 26. It has to be in, we're to use, I know that's not the right accounting term. My mind just
Obligate. I think they use the term obligated.
Thank you. Obligated. It has to be obligated by December 31st of 2024. So, you know, when I say let's be, you know, prudent and take our time. Yep, I do want to do that. But I also think that there is, you know, this amount of funds are available to us. And I would again, you know, respectfully request that the Board of Commissioners approve the motion in item 5 here.
And Margaret, just to ease your mind, and I know Commissioner Horton has a good, but
Please do.
I've already been tracking that. I mean, talk about. I mean, I haven't been as much as the corrections officers have been, all things COVID, but especially these last, I would say definitely the month of May and into June. I know it's a surprise to you, but I document and I do a lot of stuff in writing. I don't know where I can get that in the picture, but I have been documenting that, and you will see that on definitely on May's bill and forward, just because this is all consuming.
It is all consuming.
Chairman Hope, real quick, just a quick aside to Jerry and Tobin. Margaret, I asked Margaret to send an email out to all the commissioners in regards to the MAC Summit conferences that they're going to have, these regional MAC conference summits. If you both haven't had a chance, I think it'd be worthwhile to try to attend those. One of those, they're Grand Rapids, Gaylord, Frankenmuth, and then there's one other location in the Lower Peninsula, and then there's one up in the UP. I would encourage you to attend that if you can possibly do it. I think that would help add to the mountainous and voluminous materials that we're going to review in regards to this. I probably going to focus a little bit real quickly on into the public safety payroll. Margaret, I was glad to hear that you mentioned about getting with the sheriff and looking at, you can easily determine 100% of that is, that's a great statement. And I think the chart on page 13 under the CARES Act, I'm trying to be correct here, under the CARES Act, it pretty much said everything spent during the CARES Act time. And then they kind of transfer over to the ARP, and they use in both the terms guidance. And, I keep thinking back to the Monty Python movie, it's a guideline, not a rule. But anyway, it says, then it goes into that portion is an employee's time dedicated to responding to COVID-19. Again, I think that's where that statement factors in, at what percentage or what the sheriff feels or what you feel you're comfortable with in doing. So I like that. I also will point out, just as all these, we start getting all these voluminous materials, and I'm sure what we're seeing now is, I don't want to say the tip of the spear or the tip of the iceberg, but I'm assuming we're going to see many, many more. I always like to look at Wordsmith and Word documents, and this is a national publication, but oh crap, no, I lost it. Bear with me here one moment. Right on page number 2, highlighted in yellow, they got the word established spelled wrong. And Margaret and I, both people who put out a lot of stuff, will probably just cringe when we see stuff like that. So that's on a national publication. So again, very early in the process, but if you look on page 2 under executive summary number 1, 4th, 5th, 6th word in, says established, that's spelled wrong, established, but it is what it is. Again, Steve, where did you get on your lost revenues? One of the factors that you had was 4.1%. Was the county below that? That's why the 4.1% was used. Did I hear that correctly? So if we were, say, 3%, we could go up to 4.1%.
Exactly. Yes.
What was our percentage? I didn't hear you say that. Maybe I missed it.
I did not say it. I did, because I had to flip through my. So we had it was almost 2%. So it was like 1.5% was the average growth rate, looking at 16, 17, 18, and comparing it to that base year of 19. So about a 2% increase overall, collectively, entity-wide. So again, because you are under that 4.1, you're able to go up to the 4.1, which is in the interim final rule.
And in my understanding, that if we were, let's say, happily to say that we're in the 6.0, which that'd be great. But then it would be up to, it would, instead of the 4.1, it'd be 6.0. So underneath it, it goes up to 4.1. Over it, you get what it naturally would occur. Correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That's what I thought I heard you say, but I didn't hear that one number. So thank you.
Yep.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to mention on that. Again, we've been keeping track, I think, on every fiscal report we see on the bottom the COVID-19 expenditures. I'm assuming that where that dollar amount can, that seems awfully low. I'm sorry, $16,969. I know what I personally spent back in the day in the pharmacy just for rubbing alcohol and syringes. That's about a third of that. So, that's beside, of course, that's why I probably was, when I said I'm excited to retire, they probably said, good, he's gone. Good. See you later. Bye bye. He's spending too much money. But anyway, no, this is, as we have stated before, these are funds going back to February of 2019. We never thought would ever exist. And everyone, the six people, the six faces that I see right now are very, I think all of us are diligent in the way we approach things. And I don't think there's a single one of us that would sit there and want to do something incorrectly or put the county at risk down the road. So Steve, I like to hear the fact that you're double, triple, and quadruple checking that, because I'm going to defer to others. I'll look at a spreadsheet and, I'm just going to look at a couple things. And I know that when I see a spreadsheet from you or the rest of the staff, I think I can have confidence that it's put together with a great degree of due diligence. So thank you for that. And, I heard Margaret state that and she used the term beta, but I hear that we're your favorite county. So, if you want to jack your rates up, that's fine right now. But once this COVID stuff, let's see a decline. No, I'm kidding. All right. So that's all, Commissioner Hope, or Chairman Hope, that's it for my question. So
Thank you. Well said. Yeah, Commissioner.
I'll respond. Go ahead.
Jerry, you're muted. Jerry, you're muted.
My school clock was ringing, so I turned it off and forgot to turn it back on.
We like that noise when it rings, Commissioner.
Well, Steve, you said your professional association came up with the calculator, and I keep reading about the performance, the formula provided by the feds. I've been looking all over for that, can't find it, but I hope that your association used that formula in coming up with the calculator.
Yes, sir. Yes, they did. And yeah, I mean, it's in that 151 pages of the the IFR is in there, and that and I think even in the NACO report, I can't remember exactly which page it is. I think it's 14 and 15 or something. I think actually it's 15. It does. So if you look at that NACO thing, it does go into the calculation in there in that document, and yeah, and it's that counterfactual calculation is or revenue number is some things that I don't know how to do in Excel. It's 12 to the 15th power and yada yada yada, and that's beyond me. But yes, Commissioner, it is part of that.
Okay. Well, I know I was going to ask for a copy of your spreadsheet, and I'm thinking I'm going to forego that if you're talking 2,200 lines.
Yeah.
I'm not that anxious to review.
Right. Yeah. No, there's an awful lot to it, and yeah, and I think that was kind of GFOA when they created that was kind of their splash on the page was this is for, and the county's a member, but it's for GFOA members only, because they've spent time and resources to develop that, and so that's kind of why I just showed the one PDF version of it and stuff. But yes, Commissioner, it is substantial.
Okay. The only thing I think might be a weak point of the package is the wages and fringe benefits of public safety. I know the sheriff feels 100%, administration feels 100% comfortable with it, but the federal people that will eventually review it will see what they have to think if that's totally COVID-19 related. But I guess that's time down the road to see what happens. The only other comment I'd like to make is, as we were talking about the different sections of that lost revenue and some of those other funds and components of the county, I was feeling that, well, maybe we should provide a portion of that back to make them whole again. But I do like the idea of setting aside funds in an account for special projects. I know it's difficult to work through this program and then dedicate funds for something, but if we have these revenues coming in, we can put it in, let's say, dedicated fund for some project decision down the road, I think that would be good. I guess I wouldn't really be in favor of that whole lump sum going into the general fund. But that said, I'm ready to support this proposal.
Yes. Administrator McAvoy, yeah.
I was going to tell all the commissioners, I will do that now, before I make my other little comment. I am really comfortable with you just calling me Margaret on the meetings. I know it's a struggle and people want to use the proper terms and be where they think we need to be, but I am perfectly comfortable being Margaret. So don't ever stumble over trying to call me by my title. I'm happy to go with my name. I want to go back to the comment that Commissioner Horton made about the 16.9. This is the amount of expenditures that we have spent from March 3rd to May 31st. So yes, indeed, there were other expenditures spent before March 1st that have not been reimbursed by the feds under different financial options. But as of now, as of the best of our knowledge now, going back to March 3rd seems to be the right thing to do. If eventually something comes out and says, oh, you can go back further, well, okay, then we have all that documentation. But now everything so far is looking at from March 3rd forward. The legislation was signed into law on March 11th. So obviously they're going back a few days before that, but we're still keeping track of it. Trust me, if we can find a way to get more reimbursement for the previous stuff, we will find a way to do that. And back to the discussion about the public safety payroll, there's different places in this NACO document where they refer to kind of the same things over and over. And like I said, Sheriff and I are going to touch base again, but page 13 very clearly states that for public safety employees to be entirely devoted, blah, 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 is therefore fully covered if the employee or his or her operating unit or division is primarily dedicated to responding. So we don't have to list it out by every single employee and say Susie was 100% and Fred was 20% and Mary Beth wasn't any or whatever. It is the entire unit or division. And for us, the entire unit or division is the sheriff's office. But again, Commissioner Jałaszewski, I want to make it clear to all the commissioners, as I said earlier, Mike and I are going to have a couple more discussions on that before whatever comes on Tuesday. Now, I will say that, as you can see by this agenda, it's been some heavy lifting by the team the last couple of weeks here. You don't see all of us on this screen here. There's 2 staff accountants who are probably on the call and just aren't using their video. And in addition to that, we have Leanne, our payroll person, who's covering a whole bunch of other things so that we can spend the time and energy on these issues. And Emma and Jessica, everybody's part of the team and working hard, and certainly Steve Granovich. But I would want to, if possible, go with the recommendation, I guess that's on the agenda today, with the knowledge that between now and it could be Monday or Tuesday, honestly, it's going to be afternoon or afternoon by the time we get off this meeting today, maybe come back and go, oh, okay, that might change some. So the 1,132,000 commissioners might come back to you at, and I'm making this up, please don't hold me to it, might come back at, okay, we want to do 80% of that or whatever. I don't want that to be carved in cement, but I would prefer it wasn't less moving forward. It might be less by Tuesday. It certainly will not be more.
Okay. Anything
Is that
else?
helpful?
And
Yes, Steve.
and just to go back to Commissioner Jałaszewski's point on the utilization, and that's the real key that they do stress. And there was at the one GFOA presentation, and they had about 60 Q&As that came out afterwards, and that the calculation of lost revenue and the utilization of lost revenue are really need to be kept separate, and because one of the comments that they talk about is that, well, one of the answers to actually a question that I posed was, it says, the revenue loss calculation is a separate calculation than spending the dollars on government services. So that's something, you know, and it goes into a little more detail, but I really had to read through that, like, what are they trying to say here? And so really the calculation of the loss and the spend of the loss are two totally separate things. And that's kind of the logic of that whole government calculation and the whole government methodology or terminology, you know, whatever you want to say, because they say that there is, you know, no separating that lost revenue out by fund or by, you know, department or entity or whatever. It's, you know, it says Treasury articulates a whole government revenue calculation, so no need to separate the loss by fund. The calculation is done across all revenue streams, and that approach is, they're saying, although 2,250 lines is a lot, it says minimizes the administrative burden on recipients and so forth. So that's kind of that concept of, and that's something I have a hard time with, again, because of being an accountant. I like to match, you know, where did it go and where should, you know, where did it come from and where does it need to go? But that's really stressed in the IFR, and a lot of that those are two totally separate calculations. And so anyway, I just kind of wanted to share that.
Appreciate that. Okay.
Nicole, did you send out the GFOA questions and answers also? Is that in the packet? Okay.
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah, Commissioner Jones.
Nicole was.
I was just going to say, if that is in your packet, that question is number 41, and the GFOA questions about does that money have to go back to where the loss happened? So in this spreadsheet that looks like this, question 41 is maybe what you were referring to, Steve.
Yeah, that happens to be 46 that I was referring to, but yeah, I mean, there's a substantial in the 40s. There's a lot of those questions in the 40s are really good. 40, 43, 44, 46. Yeah, I mean, it really nerds out in there, but there's a lot of information there.
Okay, Commissioner Jozinski.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move, consider approving the $4,706,429 in American Rescue Plan Act funds to be reimbursed to Isabella County for $15,969 of COVID-19 expenses, $1,132,172 in public safety payroll, and $1,557,288 in lost revenues.
I will support that. It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries, and we will move on to item number 6, which is consider approving the fiscal year 2021 budget amendment transferring $800,395 from the delinquent tax revolving fund into the general fund, and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm sure the commissioners will remember that last year in the budget discussion, and I was not there, so I think I have the information correct. There was a discussion about transferring in $500,000 from the delinquent tax fund, and I believe the board of commissioners chose not to do that at that time, pending the litigation. There was also an amount put in the revenue line item of the administrator controller's office of $300,395 was built in to represent a saving from a potential furlough or attrition. A couple things about that. As far as the $300,395, there has been no attrition in general fund. We have had some employees that there has been attrition in other funds in other departments. We have administration did prepare a questionnaire. So if a department head contacts me, with a staff situation in a non-general fund area, I have had them fill out a questionnaire, send the questionnaire to me. It asks questions like, is there an alternative way to have that work done? Can we assign it elsewhere? Can an intern do it? Et cetera, et cetera. It's a very good questionnaire that was developed. And I've had those submitted to me. None of the actions in refilling any of those positions would have had any effect on this $300,395. And I can tell you that we are in July, or we are in June. We are not going to save $300,395 in the general fund revenues by not filling positions or furloughing people. So I would like to have us consider, that's part of the consideration in this motion. The other consideration is that, and I'm looking for my Post-it note, and I had a big Post-it note on this, and now of course I can't put my fingers on it, so I'm embarrassing myself. But I did have our accountant go into BS&A and look at what the balance is. I'm going to go with this at the top of my head that I believe there's $1.8 million of cash in the delinquent tax fund, of which 800,000 of that is in a CD. And there's also about, I want to say 4.8 million or 4.5 million in there in the fund balance. So certainly there is $500 that can be transferred. And as you have all received the court's decision, you know that is something that the Board of Commissioners can do, because there's no requirement in the state statute, according to the judge, to have a surplus discovered or just declared. So that's where the figure of $800,395 is coming from. It's coming from the original request in budget preparation last year to transfer in 500,000, and also my request to transfer in the 395.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Yeah, Commissioner Jelizinski.
What'd you say we had as a balance in the total of, you said we had 1.8 million and 5 million?
I believe it's one, I believe I'm sorry, Commissioner, that it was 1.8 million cash, of which the 800,000 is, I believe, in a CD. So obviously we don't want to touch that, right? And I believe it's 4.5 or 8 million. I'm kind of looking across my screen here. I don't see anybody who can help me with that. I only have about 500 documents here. For some reason, I can't find the Post-it note that had that on it, but I'm thinking it's 4.5 million or more in the fund balance.
Okay. Has the county treasurer been consulted about this transaction to get his response, or
No, I did not.
is that possible to have him invited to the work session?
It's a public meeting. He can certainly come to anything he'd like to come to.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Commissioner Horton.
Just real quick, I think in looking back, why obviously with the pending litigation at the time, my recollection is that the board decided that we did not want to take at that time anything out of the delinquent tax revolving fund. And one of the underlying reasons for, besides the litigation ongoing, is that we all, and I think I shared this with Commissioner Jelizinski and also Commissioner Hope, so I'm not sharing anything that's not public knowledge. But that the county, with regards to the Raffelli decision in the state of Michigan, the difference between what now is the delinquent amount due that's collected and foreclosed upon and what is sold at auction, that difference now is going to the foreclosee, person who got foreclosed on. They're able to capture that spread or that margin. Going forward, in the prospective use of those dollars, or prospective recovery of those dollars, there's a county form. I don't know if it's a county form, but there's a form that the foreclosee can fill out and recoup those dollars. Retrospectively, that seems to be a question mark. We had documentation presented to us as board members know, and I don't put anything other than memory, and I'm going to throw a number out, right around $500,000 to $600,000. And as a question mark in regards to how far can the courts go back, how far, if every person or every foreclosee, and I'm probably not using the correct legal term, but every foreclosee came forward and sought their spread or margin difference, what the county's risk would be. And I think that was some of the concern. I don't want to speak for the treasurer by any means, but I'll speak for myself as a county commissioner. That is a concern for me to the county as far as what legal obligations we will have or what potential lawsuits we will have. And I think, but that's with any situation in the county. That's with our patrol cruisers going on the road and accidentally hitting somebody, or accidents happen, lawsuits happen. So I'm in favor of, besides being the board being responsible for the delinquent tax revolving fund dollars, the board determines the surplus. You know, to save that money for a potential lawsuit or lawsuits, or not, I don't think it's lawsuits, recovery requests. I don't think it would even have to go to lawsuits because it's documented. It just depends on how far the courts are going to allow things to go backwards in time. We're going to be at risk for that. And there's no way to get around that statement. I mean, I'll publicly state that the county's going to probably have to get some money or reimburse monies. But this is money that we are entitled to under the delinquent tax revolving fund to put into our general budget like it is. We are not shortchanging or cutting into the delinquent tax revolving fund's purpose. And we need to get operational and start using these, because I believe, again, getting back to our big reason why we're having a lot of these discussions today, especially number one, and certainly parts of number three here, we've got a capital 4-letter word called the jail. And a part of our funding payback, or part of our payback, involves this fund. So again, I just wanted to give a quick version of some of the underlying things, just not that, you know, the board can determine the surplus, but what is potentially could be an issue from the delinquent tax revolving fund. Again, we're going to be possibly having to pay some monies reimbursed, but at the same time, this fits right in with sound fiscal policy as far as I'm concerned, taking this money out of that and not leaving anything at risk where we can't pay to continue this without having to incur any penalties or anything. It's all spelled out in the statute, Mark. I'm sure all of us have read that statute numerous times. So again, I'm in favor of this too. So so that's all I have on that. So I digressed. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, Margaret.
I want you to know I have the I have the exact amount on the delinquent tax fund balance from one of my accountants. So there you go. There, they got me. They got me covered. God bless them. $4,161,781.
Margaret, could you repeat that hundreds of thousands of dollar amount again? That kind of broke up.
$4,861,781.
That's the amounts currently sitting in the delinquent tax revolving, not projected, but that's actual money sitting in that account right now.
That's in the fund balance part.
Fund balance, okay.
So if
Okay.
the fund balance of the delinquent tax fund, then you need to
Gotcha.
add to that the cash of 1.8 million, of which 800,000 of that is in a CD.
Okay. Steve, Mr. Korinovic, what is the, again, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, and what is the normal, how's it been running real quickly, the payments every year? I know it's the up and down and all that, but what's the average amount necessary? Again, it varies, and I don't expect, it's not going to be any factor, but roughly, is that, well, basically the simple question is that enough that's left over to keep that fund balance active and safe? I mean, to keep that delinquent tax revolving fund being operational.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, I went back to all that, all the spreadsheets and so forth that we built as we, were looking at the 21 budget. And, I think the, that $800,395, that is still kind of under. I looked at the projected, and as we estimated it, if you recall, talk about, lots of spreadsheets, but I think our low point in a cash balance was about 841,000, the lowest estimated, so even if taking these dollars from from that fund, there's still sufficient dollars there. And yeah, I think it runs about 3.8 million, is, give or take, the I want to say the delinquent payouts, as they're purchased from the locals and so forth. And so looking back at that, if you recall that gigantic spreadsheet that we went through, that I think was our estimate even back then, that we felt I felt as I prepared that spreadsheet that, give or take 800,000 was a doable amount from the delinquent tax.
Steve, where, when you mentioned that spreadsheet, where is that up? Is that an up-to-date spreadsheet now? Is that something that's been ongoing?
I haven't built it, or I haven't done anything or updating since the last budget period. So this
Okay.
is about the time, I think I was looking at that to see, when I normally go through that update process, and it was dated August 13th. So, I mean, it's we
Gotcha.
have, I think we could start building. I think we normally built that during the budget process each year. But I mean, as we're, it's kind of more at the tail end of the budget process, but as we start the budget process right now, that is definitely something that we can work into the mix to get started and build.
I know finance administration, I've been on, 6 years. Tobin, I think this is your third year, I believe, on finance.
Mhm.
And I believe, and Jerry, you can chime in too, please do. I mean, never mind. I didn't. But I believe we've all seen this spreadsheet. I think I don't know where, I don't know if I could probably lay my fingers on it if I had to. Margaret, if we could, I know Commissioner Hutchinson probably has not. And I know probably, I'm going to say maybe Commissioner Swaney has not either, but maybe perhaps he has. I think that would be helpful when this comes up, to have that spreadsheet put on our work session. Only from a, for lack of not reference standpoint, but history standpoint, and kind of determine, what's going on here. That's kind of piggybacks on what I stated with the Raffelli case, and trying to explain that and some of the underlying reasons why, keeping money in that account and not having a surplus, that's that, but at the same time, that risk is not, does not benefit us to keep that money there. So, I mean, put it in and use it. And if that risk becomes identifiable in practice and in use, then the county will address that, because it could be either covered by insurance. It could be covered by a lot of different things, not just a dollar for dollar amount. So again, if there's a way we could get that spreadsheet included, Steve, I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to ask you, but to try to get that up to date. But if we could have just something as a point of reference, since we are pulling it from basically last year's funds.
Right.
And I don't want to make sure that we're okay going forward. But I mean, obviously we're going to see that, as you said, you're going to start August 13th. And if it does become an issue, I think this board, because they determine the surplus, can also determine the funding levels of that. Is that, Margaret, is that a correct statement?
So you don't need to develop, okay, I didn't go to law school. I didn't listen to my mother. So this is not legal advice or interpretation of anything. I think the issue is that from what I've read, that the judge's order is that there is nothing in the statute that surplus must be declared by the treasurer. Now, does that mean a surplus must be declared by the commissioners? I didn't read that anywhere. I do think that we would want to think about what we want to do or what we want to keep in there, and that we should do that. But I think we need to kind of keep our apples and oranges separate. I will go back to Steve's comment. Steve is not going to be able to update that between Tuesday. And so if we're going to bring it to the work session, I would want Steve to explain it, because I think just sending that out to commissioners who haven't seen it before, it would be like, I wouldn't even know what to do with it if I was a new commissioner. Steve?
I was looking at it again.
And Margaret, I do apologize for that. I did the old 6-word assume thing. Assume that
No, we can make something happen, I bet.
Yeah, I
Superman.
assume that. If you're expecting me to assume to explain all those numbers, I can give you a quick little version of my understanding, but
I have last year's, you know, I mean, and at least the methodology, I could at least explain the methodology behind what we did last year. It would be, I mean, it's kind of numbers coming to fruition really now. And so it's last year's, a year ago's actual, and then we built that to project out to, it goes out through September 30 of 2020. So that's kind of, you know, then we would roll it forward to 2021, but I would need all the history and so forth. But I mean, at least we could talk the methodology of what we did to come up with those numbers. And actually, as we were discussing here, I opened that back up and reviewed it, and I won't share it right now, but basically the projections. I mean, because it's a living document, again, kind of like the other spreadsheet that we've been, you know, working on the forecasting and so forth. So the last save I have of that document, I mentioned that, you know, that the lowest cash point in our projection was about 800,000. That included a projected pulling from that fund of about $1.3 million. So it still showed that there was approximately 800,000, again, estimated about 800,000 in cash in there, even after utilization of that. And so, but I mean, I'm happy to talk about the methodology of it, even though it's last year's numbers. At least they can understand the concept.
That's fine. I'm totally, that means I'm fine with that. So.
Yep. Commissioner Jazinski.
I guess there's been a sea change of from the fact that the lawsuit now means that we have to give back to the owner of the property any excess funds. I think in the past, revenues came in were probably very robust because we kept the whole amount. But now we can keep up the indebted portion plus some fees. I'm thinking that fund's not going to grow like it has in the past. That those revenues will be much less than what we've been able to enjoy in the previous years.
Well, the thing though, that the amount though is, don't forget, that's just for the sale of the property. That's also the other big aspect. And again, maybe I'm blending funds because I sometimes do that in my head with these two little things here. But the interest rates that we could capture for late payment fees and everything are quite large also, I believe. Is that not a correct statement? If I recall, because we collect the delinquent fees, these are just for the foreclosures in regards to it.
Yes, I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but that's my understanding, is that it's not the delinquent tax fund. It is that foreclosure fund. I can't remember something, you know, whatever.
That's what it is. That's the Raffelli case deals with just the foreclosures, not the fees. If you're late paying your taxes, you lost that. You're gonna pay your tax. You're gonna pay your fees and your penalties and your interest and all that other stuff. It's the issue with if your home gets foreclosed on let's say a $5,000, you owe delinquent tax fees of $5,000, and your home gets foreclosed and it sells for $100,000 on auction. County doesn't get to keep that 95,000. Again, that's an extreme. County doesn't get to keep that 95. Now there's a form and there's an avenue for someone, the foreclosee, to fill out and recoup those funds. And like I said, the unknown question mark is how far going backwards that's going to happen. And people have to make that claim. Counties, I don't believe, are responsible for going and looking at everything and notifying. I don't think that's a requirement. But that's our risk. And I think, like I said, I believe we were given numbers roughly between 500 and 600,000. Again, those are all public documents. I don't think I'm sharing anything that hasn't been seen or heard or stated before. So I wish I had be more accurate, but it is what it is today for me.
So the foreclosures then are a completely different fund.
Yeah, I think it's PA 123 is
Yes.
where that is, you know, so if there were, you know, like Commissioner's saying, if there was a run on that where, and I don't think you have to go searching, I don't think, again, I don't know but if there is a run, I think, the county is responsible for those, but it's not specifically the delinquent tax fund, you know, that's responsible for those. I think it's the entity.
And maybe I just totally misspoke too, but that's kind of, I had it in my brain, and you know, I'm just trying to sit there and I try to analyze what are we at risk for and why are we doing this and why are we doing that? And I'm very comfortable that there's going to be enough money to continue. I'm going to call it a program, even though that's a horrible explanation for it. Continue this system, program, whatever. I guess I could put a synonym to continue this moving forward and be comfortable in the fact that it's going to continue to go forward and generate the revenue that we're anticipating it to generate. So we're close to it,
Great,
hopefully.
Agreed.
So,
good point. Anything else, commissioners? Okay, I'll make this motion then that we consider approving the fiscal year 2021 budget amendment, transferring $800,395 from the delinquent tax revolving fund into the general fund, and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Very good.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, real quick, as I don't know if there's a point of order or not. I would like to, if I could, be kind of rude here and state that I'm going to step away from the rest of the meeting. I've got something going on today, not on it's kind of on a personal level, that it's going off at 2 o'clock, and I think I need to get ready for that, I guess. So I'm going to step away. We got to the invoice list. That's usually, I'll see that. And if anybody has, if you guys have any issues or anything, please give me a call or we can talk about it on those. Otherwise, I'll just see you guys on Tuesday or before. I'll talk to you or see you or do whatever. So
completely understand. We
right,
appreciate
all right.
you being here.
All right, guys. See you later, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so on to invoice list discussion. I did go back and find at least one of them. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary on the invoice list. Commissioner Jazinski, did you? I see you shaking your head. Okay. Okay, so with nothing to discuss there, we're on to call to the public. Nicole, do we have anyone on the line?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Before we adjourn, is there anything else anyone would like to? Yes, Margaret?
I know it's been a long meeting, but I just want to thank the commissioners. I know that you spent a lot of time and energy reading through, which was a very big packet this week with a lot of supporting documents. And I want to thank you for your due diligence and for your actions and all you do on behalf of the county. So thank you very much. It's been a good meeting. I appreciate what you've done.
It has been a good meeting. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Commissioner Jazinski?
Just a quick comment. I was contacted by the supervisor from Cove Township, who was somewhat concerned, and I couldn't answer her concern. She was concerned that the stabbing of that 12-year-old girl occurred on Sunday. The code red did not go out until Monday, and she was wondering why the delay.
Well, Commissioner, it's a fair question, Commissioner. And I heard from one of our police chiefs in the community after criminal justice the other day. I will give you the same answer that I gave at that day, which is the truth. That investigation was not handled by one of our local police organizations. It was handled by the Michigan State Police. And the Michigan State Police did not release any information. So we could not send a code red call out without being given the information out. So as soon as we sent the information out, we sent it out. There's been some discussions about it. It's, it is I don't know what word to use. It was certainly a very upsetting situation for our community. To have that occur. And, that person has been arrested, that person has been arraigned, that person is housed in our jail and will be until trial. And, that could be a very long way out. So that person is in the custody and control now of our sheriff's office. But as far as, why a code red call didn't go out, we didn't receive anything from law enforcement to send a code red call out.
Thank you.
Very good. I had the same thought, Commissioner, that it's a little disconcerting to get the code red several hours after something happened, but I assume the state police had a reason for everything that they did. We might not be aware of what that reasoning was.
Right.
There probably was some reasoning with that. Terrible tragedy, and my heart goes out to the family of the victims.
Mhm.
And I'm glad the individual was fine.
It is a terrible tragedy. Ugh. It is a tragedy, and there were, you know, the death of that child is a tragedy, but there are other victims involved in other things with that whole situation, and it'll take a long time to hack it for both law enforcement and the prosecutor's office, and certainly for our sheriff's office, taking care of that, having the custody of that person. So yeah, that is what happened, Commissioner Jablonski, and I think that you could comfortably tell the supervisor who contacted you that we
Had no control over
we
it.
did the code red call as soon as we got the information.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Anything else before we go? All right, hearing nothing else, we will adjourn, and it is 12:45 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
See everybody?
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Take care.
You too.